In this experiment, we're going to use titration to determine the molarity of an unknown concentration of hydrochloric acid using a known or standardized concentration of sodium hydroxide. So step one in this experiment is that we're going to take and we're going to find some sodium hydroxide. We've been given the concentration of 0.2 molar, and we're going to be adding it to 30 milliliters of hydrochloric acid, and there's going to be multiple trials of these, all of which have different concentrations. So we're going to take and we're going to select a trial, record the trial number, and then watch to see what happens. And what we're going to do is we're going to do, quote, a two-step titration method, which means we're going to do it fast to approximate the volume, and then we're going to get it slow to determine the correct volume of sodium hydroxide. Once we have the volume and we already know the molarity of the sodium hydroxide and we know the volume of the HCl in our flask, we can determine the concentration of HCl that was in our flask. So I'm going to do trial 7 for absolutely no good reason. So to do this, I'm going to go to my solution here. I'm going to select change. I'm going to pick 7. I'm going to hit load. And then I'm going to come down here and so when we play the video, and we take a look at this, this is going to have a magnetic stir underneath with that little plate it's sitting on. And that little white thing is a magnetic stir bar. And as the magnet in the bottom is spinning, it's going to couple with the magnet that's in the flask and make it spin too. Now we're adding sodium hydroxide right here. And our job is just to hit stop when we think it turns pink. And I think it turns pink right about here. So I'm going to write that volume down and say that my volume is around 23 milliliters for this solution to turn pink. Now what we did was we added a indicator for this, which is phenolphthalein. Phenolphthalein goes from clear to pink when your solution just becomes basic. So what is happening here is that as we are doing this, our solution starts out with HCl, which is acidic with a pH of less than 7. As we're adding sodium hydroxide, it is neutralizing, and the pH is going to go through 7, which is where all of the acid is neutralized by the base added. And then we're going to have a little bit of sodium hydroxide left over, and as soon as we do, it's going to turn pink. And that isn't actually very much, so we kind of ignore that we've had a little bit of extra sodium hydroxide. So we're just going to write down the volume of sodium hydroxide when the solution turns pink. So with that in mind, I've got a volume and we're going to use this to estimate how much we really need. So with this in mind, I'm going to go and do this more precisely. So I've done trial 7 and I've estimated this at about 23 milliliters. So if I go down to this one, we're going to notice that there are tons and tons and tons and tons of trials. And that what they've done is broken it into little bits of volumes added. And we're going to use our approximation from the first part to tell us where we need to focus our attention on this second or more precise part. So I know that it's around 23 or 24 milliliters. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to select my trial 7, and I'm going to select 23 milliliters. So I'm going to click on this one. Hopefully that's correct. I'm going to hit load, and then I'm just going to play this one. And what it's going to do is it's going to add sodium hydroxide dropwise. And what we're waiting for is that pink color to stay. What happens when it turns pink is that's just localized. We want the pink color to remain throughout. And that clearly didn't work. It's not pink. So I'm going to go to the change and I'm going to go down again to where I was and add a bit more and pick the next volume out. Again, remembering to click load and then hit play. And then I'm going to have them continue to add drop by drop. And as if we do this, we notice that this pink becomes a bit brighter. But if it stirs down, it means there's still acid left in that flask. And so we're waiting for that pink color to stay. And so we're going to continue to have it add sodium hydroxide until that pink color stays. And it's not quite there yet. So I'm going to go off to the next volume and see if that one works. So as I go to the next volume, and I know that looks like it's staying, but we're going to see if it does. So we'll go to the next one, where I'm going to pick 24 to 25 milliliters. I'm going to click load, and I'm going to press play. And notice it got clear, and then we're adding a drop, and then we're going to take a look at it. If it goes clear, we're not quite there yet. So they're going to keep adding drop by drop until it actually stays pink. And I'm going to say right about there, it looks like it stays pink. Now I'm going to record the volume, which I have at 24.1 milliliters. So let's keep going and verify that's right. It's pink. Nope, cleared out, so I'm not quite there yet. So let's try a little bit more. And we're just going to keep adding more until the pink stays. And I have 24.3 milliliters right there. Excuse me, 24.23, and that pink has stayed. So what am I going to do with this data? I've now neutralized and I have a precise value. It tells me my 23 was off. It was a good guess, but it was off. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to record our values so we can keep track of them. So I'm going to say that we did trial 7. I'm going to put in the volume of the fast titration, which is around 23, and then I'm going to do 23 to 23.5 and make a note that it was clear. It must be a number, so I'm just going to do 23 and do my starting amount and go clear. I'm going to do 23.5 and note that it was clear. I'm going to do 24 and note that it was clear. And then I'm going to go 24.2, 4.2, and I think I got about 0.25 in there somewhere. And I'm going to note that that was going to be pink. So I'm going to do that for one. And once you've done that for one, you need to pick a second trial, and you're going to come down here and you'll put your second trial here. When you do your second trial and you notice you're going to need more columns, click on this little blue guy and take and insert a row, put one below, add a number of rows you need to keep track of what you're doing. So with that, you're going to take and you're going to do some calculations. First of all, you're going to say, hey, was it more or less and why? Think about that. Think about what's happening. Using my precise volume, and I had 24.2, and I've just rounded it here, we're trying to calculate the original concentration of the HCl. Now, we were given that it was 0.2 molar. And if we go back to our titration here, I have my value of maybe 24, 24.1, maybe 24.15. So take and write down that volume as best you can. So I'm going to change that to 0.5. And that's going to be the volume. I'm going to put it in liters, and I'm doing that because we know the molarity as units of moles per liter. So because my reaction is 1-to-1, I'm going to take the volume in liters of sodium hydroxide, multiply it by the molarity. We were told that every one of these flasks right here started with a volume of 30 milliliters of hydrochloric acid. And so that's going to equal 30 mils of hydrochloric acid multiplied by the molarity of hydrochloric acid, and you're going to solve for the molarity. Do that for both of your trials. So I would say, and I would type here trial 7. Okay, obviously don't do trial 7 and solve for the molarity. And once you're done with that, they're going to say, hey, but fast is good enough. We want you to stop and think about whether or not just doing fast titrations will be sufficient.